Good day, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and I will be introducing our sustainable living presentation on behalf of my groupmates Jesslyn, Christopher, and Yingren. I will pass the presentation off to Yingren, who will introduce Phnom Penh and Berlin, our two cities of choice for Phase 1 and Phase 2, respectively.
Good day to respective lecturer. My name is Su Ingren and I'll be talking about the brief introduction and continuing to red infrastructure. Phnom Penh and Berlin are both the capital city of each country of Cambodia and Germany. Phnom Penh has almost 3 times the size of KL, while Berlin is about 3.5 times bigger. Both of the cities are located next to water streams of Big River. Phnom Penh is known as the largest religious complex in the world, which its country history are deeply related to Buddhism. The country is in Southeast Asia and it has a tropical climate. The population are now exceeding 2.2 million. The city goals and visions are discussed based on the National Council of Cambodia, and also the goals are brought up to the Asian Council, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The 4 points that I wanted to highlight are indicated in the PPT slide, which is separately turning into a sustainable city, raising awareness of dispose, reduce of traffic congestions, and expand of green in the city area. Now moving on to Berlin. Berlin is known worldwide for its history continuing from World War I. The city has also survived the World War II and demonstrated a drastic growth in economic and cultural growth. The country is located in temperate climate and it has a population of 3.5 million. The four vision and goals that I would like to mention are separately the growth in economic strength, raising the quality of life and social conscience, expansion of sustainable energy use, and also strengthen in the area of art, culture, tourism, and sport to be the center of creativity in Europe. Moving on, I would like to present the what matters of red infrastructure. I'll be focusing on how the tourism sector in each cities with supporting statistic and informations. The cultural heritages are rich in Phnom Penh, which features the famous temples Angkor Wat, Tonle Sap Lake, and the biggest river in Southeast Asia, the Mekong River. From these features, the tourism industry in Cambodia as well as Phnom Penh has emerged from the 90s, and it is a major contributor to the national GDP. It is contributing around 12% in the total GDP of Phnom Penh, and it is generating 2.2 billion US dollars annually. And the sector has over 782,000 employees solely from Phnom Penh. While tourism sector being the greatest industry in the country, these are threats and issues which are stopping the industry to improve. The threats on preserving natural heritages in Cambodia are sailing with difficulties from the annual tourists from both inside and outside the country. Problems such as littering, agricultural expansion, and also both water and land pollutions are the problems which causes a headache to the locality. Other than the threats in nature reserve, the lack of infrastructure such as decent hotels, railways, public transport web are not consolidated. There are less direct flights to the Phnom Penh International Airport, and lastly, there aren't enough English experts to back up the tourism experiences of overseas tourists. Next, I would like to move on to talk about how the tourism sector is successful in Berlin. It is similar to Phnom Penh that Berlin has also have a deep root with the cultural heritages, which are the forefront of European thoughts, politics, and art over 1,000 years. It features famous architecture such as the Brandenburg Gate, the Berlin Cathedral, and lastly the Berlin Wall. The tourists arriving in Berlin International Airport peaked at 2019, which is around 30 million people. Being the capital of Germany and the most popular tourist destination in the country, Berlin has generated over 11.1 billion US dollars from the tourist sector and it has around 240,000 employees. The contribution of travel and tourism to GDP has maintained around 9 to 11%. Thanks to the resources Berlin already have, the three strategies that lead the tourist sector into success. The establishment of travel portal, which is called Visit Berlin, allows tourists to have easy access to hotels, sites, and tips. Fully utilized of the accommodation and entertainment industry, Berlin offers opportunity not only to enjoy the cultural heritages such as the Berlin Wall, which is the most Instagram location in Europe, but also the natural in or not from the city. The joining of GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, has also helped Berlin to establish global standards for travel and tourism. Moving on to phase 2, I will be talking about economic situation in both the cities. The economic sector share in GDP of Phnom Penh are separately 23.9% in agriculture, 37.1% in industry, and last 39%, which contributes the most, the service sector. Being the place with most tourist attraction in Cambodia, the informal economy sector are a gray zone to the economy in this country. Around 93.1% of the service sector population are engaged in the informal economy, which diverted to enterprises, jobs, and workers that are not protected by the state. This causes the illegal activities such as sex industries and gambling to happen. And the informal economy also leads to poor wages as the wages are not protected by the law. The health problems are also a big matter to the workers who are working under poor conditions. Cambodia has the lowest employment rate in Asia country, which recorded 1.4% according to the Asian Development Bank. Although it has a low employment rate, the youth's employment go under age 15 are around 32%. The number of childs under the age of 15 entering the labor market are nearly at 300,000 to 400,000 in the whole country. This is because the Cambodia's GDP spent on education are only 1.6%, ranking around 170th in the world according to UNESCO. The three main issues which are high poverty rate, low income from the informal economic sector, and illegal activities in informal economy are stopping Phnom Penh from having a healthy economic growth. Moving on to Berlin, the economic sector of Berlin are dominated from the service sector, which is up to 77.3% of the total GDP. Berlin has a stable growth in GDP throughout the years from 2009 till this year. The important sectors in Berlin, for example, are life sciences, transportation, informations, and communication technologies. All of them are related to media and service industries. The employment rate in Berlin maintained a high level in all through Europe and also the world. The employment rate never dropped from 75% and below even after the pandemic. The strategies that led Berlin to this success are because the vocational training from the government of Germany and the higher wage that are supported from a law in each industries, and also the high visitor amount of tourists, and it need to have more job opportunities.
Hi, my name is Christopher. So I'll be talking about the green infrastructure part for Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and also Berlin, Germany. So starting off with Phnom Penh, as you can see from the first two green space coverage diagram that is in 1973 and 2014. So as you can see very obviously from these two diagrams, the green space coverage or the forest coverage of the city of Phnom Penh is keep on decreasing. So it decreased until with just 0.67 meters squared per capita green area as the data that we researched in 2020. So due to the lacking of the green spaces, the carbon emission of the forest in Cambodia has emitted 77.6 milliton carbon dioxide emission per year, which leads to a very high carbon dioxide gas emission. Due to the high carbon dioxide gas emission, this leads to two of the major issues that currently happen in Phnom Penh, which is lack of green spaces and also climate change. First of all, I would like to talk about the lack of green spaces. As all of us know that Cambodia is one of the rapid growth economic growth country over the past decade, especially in Southeast Asian countries. and it accelerated the urban growth in and around the capital of Phnom Penh, which causes which also leads to a very rapid urban development in the city of Phnom Penh. So due to the rapid uh, development of the city is currently trajectory and a concrete jungle developed spaces is no longer desirable. Meaning to say that due to the urban development of the city of Phnom Penh, the forests are getting disappear and the lack of green space happen. Next, talking about the climate change, a study is conducted by a local university so that shows that the PM25 reading was 46 milligram per meter cube micrograms per cubic meter. According to the quality, which is really exceeding the air quality standard that recommended by the World Health Organization (WHO) at 25 micrograms per cubic meters. And also, according to WRICIT, the greenhouse emissions of Phnom Penh increased by 10.85 milliton CO2e from the year of 1990 to 2013. Next, moving on to the Berlin part. So as you can see from the green space coverage area, the green space coverage area diagram shows that the green space of Berlin from 2000, year of 2000 until 2011 hasn't really changed much yet, and the increase there is showing that increase in green spaces, which in which that the green spaces is now 8.81 meter cube per capita green area, which is the data of 2018. And due to the high green space coverage area, which has a lot of trees and plants, the carbon dioxide emission in Berlin is lower than in Phnom Penh, which is just 4.95 tons CO2e per year. And what are the strategies that Berlin is doing to reduce the carbon dioxide emission? First of all, I would say that it's the encouragement of recycling. So people in the government of Berlin each have a strategies for the recycling. So if a people in the Berlin they get a recycle the bottle, they will get 0.25 euros for every plastic bottle that they recycle. Next is the popularity of cycling over driving. So the government of Berlin is really encourage the people, the residents in Berlin to cycle instead of driving. So and according to the research, the Berlin government is planned for a 3,000 kilometer bicycle traffic network that encourage people to cycle, which can also at the same time reduce the air pollution that caused by the vehicle. And last but not least is building parks. So green parks and wildlife cover more than 30% of the city with 2,500 parks and garden and 440,000 trees. Next, I will talk more about it. Okay, moving on to the forest coverage part. As you can see from the data that from 2001 to 2021, Phnom Penh has lost around 81 hectares of tree covers, which equivalent to a 8% decrease in tree cover since 2000, the year of 2000, and 17.8 kiloton of CO2 is emitted. And from the right hand side diagram, we're showing that in 2000, Phnom Penh had a soil organic carbon density of 98.4 kiloton of carbon per hectare and a total storage of 8.64 milliton C. So as of 2000, 3.5% of Phnom Penh was tree cover, but until 2010, the percentage has increased until 5%. Next, talking about Berlin, from 2001 to 2021, Berlin has lost 283 hectares of tree cover, which equivalent to a 0.91 decrease in tree cover since 2000. In 2000, year of 2000, Berlin had a soil organic carbon density of 233 Tc per hectare and a total carbon storage of 2.19 mtc. And as of 2000, 43% of Berlin was tree covered, and this number has decreased until 38% in the year of 2010. So, so next, I would like to point out another two issues that happens that causes the decrease in forest coverage. First is deforestation. According to research, Cambodia is having one of the world's most forest endowed country that was even not historically widely deforested. The country has lost 1.44 million hectares of 5,567 miles of forest. And between the year of 2001 and 2018, an average of 16.8 kilotons of CO2 emission was released in Phnom Penh in regions where deforestation was the major driver of loss. Next is about the soil erosion. Cambodia has about 4.45 million hectares of land under highly erodible class, which the driver of land degradation in Cambodia have been attributed mainly due to the deforestation and expanding of agricultural lands. Due to high population growth rate and increased economic activity, land use and land cover (LULC) changes will cause environmental disturbance, particularly soil erosion. So, what are the strategies that Berlin is doing to reduce the, the issues of deforestation and soil erosion? According to research, on 23rd of September, the German government and the World Bank have launched a collaboration known as Pro-Green to combat the deforestation. This partnership is aimed to reduce the deforestation and biodiversity loss and increase land fertility, mitigate climate change and improve livelihoods, particularly for impoverished and rural population. That's all for my green infrastructure part, and I'll move on to my next teammate. Thank you.
My name is Jesselyn and I will be presenting Blue Infrastructure. In Phnom Penh, buildings have concrete storage tanks that supply water, but most of these tanks are polluted by bacteria and is unsafe for drinking. While the main source of water supply are usually from polluted areas as they lack access to water facilities and infrastructure. As example, Mekong River. People who live around the river engage in agricultural. Over the years, the river has become polluted due to agricultural, industrial, and domestic waste discharged into the water bodies. Water quality in Phnom Penh is considered very poor according to the index. The water contamination is a result of mining and industrial activities. Safe accessible water is especially difficult in rural areas as only half of the rate of their water is safe and drinkable. In some cases, poor water quality had cost the lives of 10 and 121 hospitalized. The main issues of water management in Phnom Penh is water pollution, health hazards, groundwater contamination. In contrast, Berlin has proper networking and excellent water quality. The groundwater extracted is able to cater to 3.4 million people with drinkable water. Water treatment practices in Spree River such as retention ground filters, grey water recycling, rainwater harvesting are in use to ensure top quality water. Almost 25% of the city is a water protection zone and has ecological and recreational value. To ensure quality control, they implement many water protection procedures and precautionary principles. Their strategies are thorough water treatment, drinking water from regional resources, and groundwater recharge. Moving on, Phnom Penh is infamously known as the city of water as it is highly prone to floods during rainy seasons. Due to the destructions of the wetlands for development, the risks of flooding have increased greatly. This map shows the estimate flood extent in Phnom Penh. This is the cause of improper urban planning. Extreme rainfall has been causing stress on the city. Drainage system causing Mekong and Tonle River to swell up. There are few factors that leads to the flooding. Land Firstly, land reclamation, lack of runoff of rainwater, insufficient infrastructure. The city's inability to adapt makes it vulnerable to climate change. During monsoon, the city is severely impacted by the disaster as the numbers of damages. So the main issue here are lack of runoff for rainfall, flash floods, and blockage of sewer. In comparison, Berlin has a honeycomb-like drainage that follows the course of the river and the level of terrain that leads to the lowest point, and finally pumps water up to the sewage treatment plants. There are two types of system. Three quarters set up as separate network system and one quarter as combined sewage network system. However, Berlin's sewer system is only designed to accommodate normal rainfalls. So in events of heavy rain, it will reach its capacity limits and run full. This is the pink tubes. The pink tube is not only vanity to the Berlin streets, it also serves to pump water from the ground and transport it to channel the water and facilitate the urban works. The main strategies here are separate pipelines, rain storage tanks, and roadway drainage.
Okay, this part of the presentation will focus on our analysis of the great infrastructure for Phnom Penh and subsequently Berlin. Now, in Phnom Penh, people mainly travel by paratransit methods such as tuk-tuks, which are the most popular way of traveling around, or motorbikes and motodalps, which are motorbike taxis. A significant amount of the population relies heavily on private vehicles such as personal cars and alternative forms of transport, including buses such as the Phnom Penh City Bus, which is the most widely used form of public transit, or train services, or water taxis. What we discovered was that public transit in Phnom Penh suffers from a lack of development and low ridership. The train service only operates on weekends, and railway lines typically share spaces with other vehicles and public paths, which is very dangerous. Their bus service suffers from a lack of stoplights and bus stops, and has very inconsistent service. The biggest key issue, however, is that Phnom Penh's modes of public transport are disconnected from each other. Passengers are required to have a means of transport to get to the city's colonial train station, and the water taxi is very unpopular because its stops don't connect to other transit stations. All of their public transport infrastructure was envisioned separately, which means that users are stranded due to no connecting stops and they're unable to get to stops and stations in the first place. Which brings us to the second issue of traffic congestion. Lack of space seems to be the main source of most problems in Phnom Penh, as it prevents the city buses from operating optimally and prevents garbage trucks from collecting waste frequently, which I will talk about later. Their roads regularly face space constraints due to poor designs or sidewalk parking because there's a lack of parking spaces. It is also caused by most citizens opting for private transport via cars and motorbikes because the public transport is unreliable, which ends up causing the public transport to suffer more, which just feeds the cycle. It also results in poor walkability for pedestrians as the roads and pavements are clogged with vehicles. This results in the third issue of air pollution due to the high CO2 emissions from the vehicles, because most of the people in Phnom Penh buy cheap, poor efficiency vehicles to navigate around the city. Now we move on to Berlin. And Berlin's modes of transport include three types of trains. They have the local above ground trains, or the S-Bahn, which enables cross city travel across the entire region, the underground metro, or U-Bahn, which connects the various inner city districts together, and the regional trains, which connect Berlin to the rest of Germany. Other methods of transport include the street trams, public bus, and both personal and public bicycles. Contrary to Phnom Penh, Berlin's public transport is very well connected, largely due to all of it being streamlined and organized by a single public body known as BVG. The city's main station, which is called Hauptbahnhof, services all the main train lines and bus routes, enabling easy transfers between the two different modes for passengers. The station is also within walking distance of many major offices, administrative buildings, and tourist attractions. Bus stops are located near train station entrances and are frequent throughout the city. 88% of Germans live within 1 kilometer of a transit stop. Berlin has also committed to the creation of large mixed-use areas where residential buildings and commercial working spaces share the same urban space, such as one example being Potsdamer Platz. This results in the need for private vehicles as everything is located within walking distance and thus minimizes the use of private vehicles. Traffic congestion no longer becomes an issue, and the city thus becomes very walkable. Lastly, their biking infrastructure is very extensive. 12% of Berlin's total traffic is made up of cyclists, and there's almost 1,000 kilometers of biking facilities in the city. Bike paths cover the city, and some roads even have a dedicated bike lane, and car speeds are limited for the safety of bicycle users. Park and ride stations are also readily available for those who do not have a bicycle, and bikes are also allowed on buses and trains, which further adds to the ease of getting around the city via public transport. We move on to the topic of waste management in both cities. Phnom Penh and Berlin generate roughly the same amount of waste daily, around 3,000 metric tons and 3,670 metric tons, respectively. The difference is in how the waste is managed. More than half of Phnom Penh's waste comes from households, and 63% of it consists of food waste, followed up by plastics. The Dankour landfill was opened in 2009 to contain the capital city's waste for 25 years, but in 5 years, half of it was already full because the population of Phnom Penh simply generates too much. Most of the time, the waste cannot even get to the landfill because garbage trucks do not collect frequently due to the traffic congestion mentioned earlier. There is also a lack of public dustbins, so people tend to chuck their garbage on roadsides and rivers wherever they please. They also do not have a centralized recycling system, so most of the garbage collection and recycling is done by informal waste pickers and street recyclers known as achais, or by community groups. Due to these short term solutions, only 10% of everything recyclable is actually recycled. Finally, there is a lack of public attitude. Because of lack of infrastructure and waste management, citizens do not feel the need to properly separate or recycle their waste, so they just kind of chuck their garbage wherever. They also heavily rely on plastic bags due to their convenience, especially at wet markets. Berlin, however, has a strong culture of recycling and being careful of waste, both on the government and individual level. Half of all the waste produced by the city is recycled. It starts at the consumer level with 6 different bins classified by color, which determines what can be thrown into each. There are large amounts of separated bins placed throughout the city, which allows collection to occur easily. Mechanical physical stabilization facilities, or MPS facilities, help to rigorously separate waste even further, and most of it is either incinerated slash sent to a plant to produce alternative fuels or recycled to be used in new products. As a result, a small proportion actually ends up in the landfill. This process is also massively supported by legislation and policies to ensure every citizen does their part, and that companies operating in Germany do the same. So they don't just have a lot of waste in their landfill. They also have a fund system where citizens are incentivized to recycle as they can obtain a small deposit from returning recyclable bottles and cans, which creates a strong recycling culture amongst the population of Berlin and cuts CO2 emissions significantly. Bottle containers are also placed throughout Berlin, so people can just throw their bottles away so that the poorer population can recycle these bottles and obtain some money in the process.
Moving on to phase 3, the issues red infrastructure in Phnom Penh, a high poverty rate, illegal economic activities, lack of infrastructure, and also the communication problem between local and tourists. To counter each of the solution, policies and regulations must be helped by the Cambodia Sustainable Development Goals. Moving on to the illegal economic activities, law enforcement and community collaboration should be worked with community patrol must be established for safety of the streets. Attraction of foreign investment to have more infrastructure to counter the problem of lack in infrastructure in Phnom Penh. The communication problem can be easily solved by having more GDP spent on education to enhance the education system.
Moving on to the phase 3 part, there are four main issues that we discovered during phase 1 and phase 2, which are deforestation, soil erosion, lack of green spaces, and also climate change. First of all, for deforestation, it is due to the lack of green spaces in Phnom Penh caused by deforestation lead to a high carbon dioxide emission. So our proposed solution are, first of all, we'll be talking about the government policies or regulation. The government should restrict the tree felling by enforcing a set of laws that control it. They should set out rules and regulations to control the amount of illegal logging activities. Next, we can plant more trees. The action of reforestation helps prepare damaged ecosystem stability, soil sustain the water cycle, and gradually restore the ecosystem service we rely on. Third one would be encourage recycling. According to research, 1 ton, which equivalent to 2,000 pounds of paper, put to recycling prevents the cutting of 17 trees. These 17 trees then sequester around 250 pounds of carbon dioxide from the air every single year. Next will be the soil erosion part, was caused due to the water pollution and deforestation. So what can we do for the soil erosion part? First of all, we can increase the vegetation cover. Plants prevent wind and water erosion by covering the soil and binding it with their roots. The best plants that can prevent soil erosion are herbs, wildflowers, and small trees. Next will be land terracing. The erosion can be combated by planting in flat areas created on hillsides in a step-like formation, which is more like a terrace farming. Third will be building up a proper water diversion structure. This is used often for quality control. Diversion structure cause water to flow along a desired path away from the areas of high risk of erosion. The third issue will be lack of green spaces. This is caused by unplanned and unregulated process of urbanization has resulted in a lack of green spaces. The solution for this will be, first of all, proper urban planning, which also ensure a good transportation, healthcare, and judicial system. Thus, the city will grow rapidly without having any negative impact on its economy and the citizen itself. The second one will be building pocket parks. Pocket parks are basically a small park accessible to the general public, which were more effective in larger existing park due to the increase of pedestrianism. It also helps to protect and conserve local wildlife and also the landscape. The fourth issue and also the last issue that we encounter is climate change due to the high greenhouse gas emission and high ground temperature. So the solution, according to our research, will be using the renewable energy because the renewable energy such as solar and wind, they do not emit any carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that contribute to the global warming. The second will be the stop open burning because open burning will produce a lot of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and particulate matter, and also the carbon monoxide, which is contribute to air pollution and serious respiratory sickness such as lung cancer. The third would be promote cycling, which is same as the strategy in Berlin, because cycling not only improve a person's body health, but it also help reduce the amount of carbon emission compared to other transportation such as car.
Overall, the issues we found from the blue infrastructure is groundwater contamination, the lack of formal wastewater treatment, flash flood, and lack of runoff for rainfall. Um, so we come up with two kinds of solutions. Um, First, to remove contaminants from wastewater and convert it into effluent that can return to the water cycle. Um, First, we propose sewage treatment. Um, this one operates by circulating air to encourage growth of bacteria to break down the sewage. Another is green intensive cleaning. The filter will filter the dirty storm water by removing the dirt from the water using a substrate and reed plants. Next is replenish water source by creating a partial closed water circle and obtaining drinking water completely from the urban area. Finally is pressure pumping stations where the pump stations transport wastewaters to sewage treatment plants where this pressure mains. So this pumping station will make sure the storm water tank is monitored and controlled. Next, to counter flash floods and lack of runoff for rainfall, the solution aims to improve waterways to store or discharge excess water to prevent flooding. Firstly, we can propose a storm drain. It's a channel used to carry off rainwater. It can be used for drains at home, business or business, as well as for the pipes that are part of the city drainage system. uh, Next is like sponge landscape. this is an urban construction model for flood management. It strengthens ecology, infrastructure, and drainage system, and it's also a natural-based solution that could use natural landscape to catch and store water. Uh, Furthermore, there's retention ponds. It will be designed with extra storage capacity to reduce surface runoff during heavy rains, and also finally, rain gardens to recharge groundwater. The water runoff impermeable surface collect pollutants along the way. The rain garden will collect the rainwater runoff, allowing the water to be filtered by the vegetations and uh, through the soil, and thereby recharging the groundwater aquifer, and this process will filter out all the pollutants.
So we've identified the main issues in Phnom Penh's great infrastructure, which consists of a disconnected public transport, heavy traffic congestion and air pollution, ineffective waste collection, and a disorganized recycling system, as well as a lack of public concern. Our solutions therefore strive for two aims. One, to increase the utility of the public transport services by reconnecting them together and encouraging its use and thus reducing reliance on private transport, which can free up roads. We can do this by creating designated bike and tuk-tuk lanes. This embraces Phnom Penh's local culture of mainly using paratransit, and so less space will be taken up by heavy vehicles, such as personal cars, and encouraging people to cycle more. We can also create bus stops and interchanges between train stations, bus stops, and water taxi stops to reconnect the system and make it easier for people to transfer from one mode to another. Shaded pedestrian walkways and bridges can be used to connect them and increase walkability, and bike sharing stands can be installed to cultivate a biking culture. Mixed use areas can also be created by converting and renovating old buildings. Residential and commercial buildings should share the same urban space, so people who live in the city are able to walk to work or run the errands without the need for a personal vehicle, reducing strain on roads and thus minimizing congestion. Pavements with bollards and tree shade can be developed to prevent sidewalk parking and promote walkability. The second aim is to improve waste management through organization, installing infrastructure, and cultivating mindful practices. Separate bin installation in busy areas can help deter littering. Collection centers in residential and commercial areas allow for waste to be stored and collected easier, and even electric tricycles with cargo holds could be used to reach narrow areas where garbage trucks are unable to collect. As for recycling, there needs to be recycling centers to create demand and awareness amongst citizens. A biomass treatment center to allow food waste to be used in the generation of alternative fuels, and better policy and education in the form of seminars or a similar bottle recycling system like Berlin's to encourage recycling and promote better waste habits. Thus concludes our presentation. We hope that these strategies can be used in not just Phnom Penh, but also applied to other cities across the world to ensure a more sustainable future for the betterment of humanity. Thank you for listening.